Hello, everybody. New developments in regards to Quant and even Hedera. What are they and why are they so important? Well, before we get into all that news, one of the things I want to talk about with you guys is how do we, conservatively speaking, hit, for example, 39 cents per H bar, which would basically be a 8.15x from here. And then on top of that, QNT, $980.11, which would be a 16x from here. Now, it's basically this, and that is hitting some metrics by doing at least 1% of a particular market. Stick around to the end of the outline. You're going to want to know what I am talking about when it comes to that. So, starting things off the right way, we talk about connectors. And one of those connectors basically is MasterCard. Where are we going with this? Let's jump into it. Smash a like if you haven't done so already. And basically, shout out to Channing Harrell, our brother Channing. Done some live shows with him in the past and so on. But he messaged me earlier about the whole thing of, hey, man, you want to check out this condensed version of what's going on with Hedera. And also, of course, MasterCard. How do we say things like Quant without saying Quant? Let's jump into it. This has an interview with the one and only Brandon of the H-Bar Bull channel. A lot of you guys are subscribed to that channel. Highly recommend that channel. But I fast forward to this key area, and I want you to hear it from this guy. And who is that guy? Well, basically speaking, it is this guy from this particular company called Fresh Supply Co. And it's about how they promised integrating payments. And of course, he's the CEO. His name is David. He gives a full explanation of what his team gives in their demo. Now, I'm not going to do the full thing because that's at least 18 minutes. But what I am going to do is jump to the key areas. Listen to this. If you don't think that this spells Quant without saying Quant, I don't know what to say. But the key thing is this. I will own QNT. I will own H-Bar because I could hit two birds with one stone. What are we talking about? Let's simply get into it. Let's play this, and we'll come right back here in just a moment. Here we go.
Well, it's a messaging service in between multiple MasterCard issuing banks. Any bank can use it. You have to be a bank, right? But it utilizes tokenized deposits. So tokenized deposits are a different way of looking at money on ledger and payments on ledger, rather than using stable coins, right? Which are a great technology. They offer settlement finality. They're instantaneous, and you can see the transfer between your wallets, etc. And they're a great innovation, right? Banking is highly regulated, right? So the ability to be able to say, and this is much like how banks, commercial banks and central banks interact, will say that, yep, there is money in this account. This person's requesting X amount of money. They do have it, and we'll transfer it to you, and we'll settle that at the end of the day. So what we're doing is we're making a representation of a request for money. Multi-token network is double checking between the different banks that the monies are available and then making that instantaneously available. So that's a closed and private system. But we do believe in atomicity or supporting those DVP type transactions. So the good or the NFT, the 721 is not on multi-token network. That representation of what the goods are and who the wallets, the buyer, the seller, that's all being run, and our infrastructure is being run on Hedera, on mainnet. So that representation of someone offered goods, we use MTN as a payment conditionality, payment trigger, and double checking that there's money inside of the banks between those two related parties, right? That is MTN.
Understood. Now, this sounds pretty innovative on what MTN is. Is anybody else doing this? Do they have any competitors?
Well, there are tokenized deposits are really squarely aimed at banks. So, I mean, you Google it, you do the research. It's a kind of a select handful. Your JP Morgans, Citibanks, regulated liability network, Partior. That's pretty much it. So it's, again, very payment and interbank driven, right? So the ability for us to be able to develop deploy our application on top of it and then create that representation, the tokenized asset which can be swapped between the buyer and the seller, and that existing on mainnet, I would say that's what makes it interesting, right? So these are serious payments for serious bankers right? Using fractionalized reserve systems, settling in between themselves, but really finding the efficiency of the ledger, avoiding regulatory scrutiny, but still being able to represent this is the thing, the buyer's requesting money, being able to do that on ledger, and you'll be able to have a look at our application, our app, and being able to utilize the benefits of wallet-based infrastructure, these custodial applications, and moving the asset between the two, and then having that receipt, I would say, saying that payment has been made via this specific secure messaging service, right? That is financial grade.
Okay, so you heard what he said right there briefly in regards to references to like Parsher, JP Morgan, you even heard the RLN, right? All those things, think about the Quant connection, and we verify that numerous times. If you're new, you can watch some of the deep dives. We get really into that, right? So the other thing I want to talk about is this as well, and this is right from the MTN white paper. A lot of times, a lot of people don't read the white paper, and that's okay. It's really long, but I thought I would jump into some of these key things because we are talking about Hedera right now. And so let's jump into this. Talks about, for example, unlocking the potential digital asset innovation. That's the name of this particular white paper. Building a Mastercard multi-token network. Okay, so people have asked, does MasterCard ever specifically mention like things like crypto? Well, the answer is yes. On page 4 of this 33-page document, they say specifically that they believe that the key to mitigating risks is to integrate crypto ecosystems, cutting-edge innovations with a set of shared standards, governance, procedures, and even compliance when it comes to all this, right? And it's the expectations. Like it says, banks, virtual asset service providers, which is called VASPs, and their users can opt into. MasterCard is developing a multi-token network, MTN, to facilitate broader mainstream adoption of blockchain and digital asset technologies. That's big. That's absolutely huge. You want to see some of this stuff. And then for this guy to be interviewed by Brandon H. Bull, that video he did get a lot of views, but that's not the point. The point is, it's what are some of these businesses doing, and more importantly, what is MasterCard really, really doing? All right, a little bit more about this. They talk about their goal. Goal is for the MTN to include a group of validated counterparties that would form a secure network overlay. Some people will say, hey, this is Quant's competition on top of existing blockchains. If you think about it, Quant's overledger already does that, right? So this is not me, trying to create FUD about any one of these. It's just recognizing, look, I own both of these. And as we know, when it comes to Quant, you have people that sit, with the Quant network that basically are part of Hedera and, of course, even in, part of the Quant network. So we've already been there, done that, right? Another thing I want to get into is this over here as well. We have a citation from the HBAR Foundation. And if you're wondering about Fresh Supply, the guy you saw on the left, it says Fresh Supply Co., which is called FSCO, the largest user of MasterCard Province, migrated to Hedera for real-world asset tokenization. And that was, March 30th, 2023. But again, this aged really well because that interview you saw with Brandon H. Bull, that was only a few days ago on the 27th. All right. So check this out. If you're wondering what MasterCard Province is all about, or provenance, is this right here. It comes from developer.mastercard.com. And it says leveraging blockchain-based traceability data to drive multi-rail bank-to-bank payments and financing across supply chains. Constant references about building trust, references about automation, and of course, supply chain visibility. But this part about automated payments, when we get more into the outline, you'll see why even Quant stands out with this, because let's face it, that's one of their focus when it comes to, things like you see here about payment gateways and the services, and more importantly, the overlays, hence the term overledger. Getting into the next part of our outline, I'm going to jump back to the video with Brandon and just listen to this for yourself. Literally, listen to this. How do you say Quant without saying Quant, but more importantly, how do you even understand what MasterCard is really doing? And this particular, company, if you will, Fresh Supply, how they leverage some of the technologies, and more importantly, Hedera. Let's play this. We'll jump back here in just a moment.
Representing those things, and I'm a firm believer that things are migrating that way. In 10 and 15 years, this will not be abnormal or unusual. But right now, there's regulation, right? And bankers prefer tokenized deposits. Now, how does that correspond, or how does that work with something like, like a public ledger, right? How can we have, how can multiple parties view that thing or bundle it together and securitize it? That's where it's important. So abstracting away the complexity and just saying, hey, we'll run an application, there'll be an interbank settlement, right? That's private, but the representations of what was sold and who got paid for it, that's all being put on Hedera. So, I mean, effectively, any bank that wants to ascribe or sign up to MTN can utilize the benefits of that. And the goal of that is MTN is not to be, they want to operate with any chain, whether that's ETH, mainnet, or Hedera, right? And so the first chain that we'll be integrating with, where the assets are being represented and the receipt of payment, is on Hedera, on mainnet. So we believe in public ledgers.
That's exactly what we want to hear. So what scale could we potentially be talking about with this?
Look, I don't want to overpromise and under-deliver, but you realize trade and B2B type payments, and you look at RTGS, there are trillions of dollars flowing through it, right? So I think it's a case of technology has, or regulation has not kept pace with the technology, and that's understandable. Look, these are larger scale B2B payments made in between banks and larger B2B type customers, right? So millions of payment volume is pretty normal. If we look at the whole space and the space that needs to be migrated over, I mean, you can just Google Bain, look at tokenization, right? There's various views on it, but it's in the trillions of dollars, right? And so again, in order to tap into, like, we play more in the bridging TradFi to ledger space, right? Not so much smaller retail payments. So the size of the prize is large. I think that part of the key is abstracting away and making it simple from a UX perspective, being respectful of regulation and making it de-risked. I think a lot of times in our, as enthusiasts, we're excited by things and we'll just use them. Large organizations can't think the same way, and they're regulated in a different way.
And finally, when does this actually hit the mainnet? When will we start to see the transactions on the mainnet?
Some early stage transactions and testing are already on the mainnet. So when banking partners begin to use it, I would imagine over this calendar year and into next year, you'll see more transactions. There'll be subsequent stuff in the news, which is, again, around banks signing up to multi-token network. We're very Asia focused. So, Japan, Australia, Singapore, Hong Kong. Yeah, again, over time, banks will utilize it. And that translates to transaction volume, right?
Okay, so think about that for a second, okay? It's being early on these technologies. I mean, for people, you'll see always at least a couple people in the comments, and it's okay, where they're like, this is garbage, it hasn't taken off, it had its chance, blah, 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 right? Again, it's a long-term investment. Jumping a little bit more into this gentleman with his team has a demo. Now, after they show the demo, I'm also going to share, for example, Quant Network demo. And of course, you can make up your mind of like, okay, does it sound familiar? Does it not? But the point is, for me, I recognize both technologies and, of course, have been owning both for a while and DCAing into both projects for quite a while. Let's jump back into it. This is the last part of this particular segment from the guy of Fresh Supply Code, David Indurias, if I pronounced that right. All right, let's jump back into that. Here we go. And this is not too long, but yeah, we're going to just get back into that. Pull it up on the screen. All right, here we go.
You'll be the buyer now, and he's going to create a sales link in the select payment from his bank account, which is connected and will settle through Mastercard MTN. So it'll be instantly available.
And by the way, that heavy breathing is not me. It's one of the people that's part of his project. But anyway, just want to throw that out there.
So Phil, take it away.
We've already put the amount, which is 10 British pounds. That's the default for MTN. And the method of payment will be bank tokenized deposits, which is the MTN. Great. So there's two wallets. There's one to handle the transfer of funds, and there's one to handle the transfer of the asset. So while we do that, Phil's going to simulate MTN, which is going to approve the earmark, and they're going to verify that there's proof of funds.
I would just add color to this. That's a real commercial payment for real money that's being tokenized, and double checking that the funds are available on MTN. But all of the infrastructure around the good, the invoice, is made very simple, and that's being stored on Hedera, on mainnet, right? And we'll show that in a second, but that asset is living on mainnet. And then once this transaction is made, that receipt, the proof that that transaction has been fulfilled, that X seller said this was okay, I accept, and I choose to pay out of my bank account on multi-token network, you see it's all been extracted away. We're not messing around with the typical kind of wallets and that sort of thing, because you know what, a director of trade or some kind of analyst in the trade credit department is not going to be going to their MetaMask or Hashpack or this or that, right? They're going to be processing lots of payments for different invoices, right? And they'll be settling using a secure large-scale B2B enterprise type payment system.
Okay, so settling in a particular payment system. Think about what he said. Now, again, he, at the beginning of the outline, was mentioning specifically to Brandon about how there is a small handful of other ones that basically do that. Right, there is. So, again, competition. So, at the end of the day, this whole concept that I see other people do is like, you're only investing in one particular coin or one particular token, and that's it. Hey, at the end of the day, you're going to do you, right? But for me personally, every single time I see mentions of anything tied to ISO 222, I look more into the bigger picture of like, okay, it's what's connected to that new system or that new flip of the switch reset, if you will, no pun intended. So bullish on HBAR, bullish on QNT. Is that all I have? No, stay tuned. You want to hear a little bit more about this. Jumping into the next part of the research we have for you, I want to jump into this because this aged really, really well. People forget about some of these things, or if you're new, you're just not aware about it, and that's totally fine, right? Everybody has a different time of when they entered into this space. But basically, if you're wondering if there was a Quant network connector to MasterCard, the answer is yes. It's not just Gilbert Verdin with a Vocal Link in the past under that umbrella of MasterCard, but there's this. And again, many years ago, this was established. What are we talking about here? Well, basically, you see officially from the Quant network talking about, the collaboration, of course, with MasterCard. So this right here, if you jump into it, it talks about this piece from Cointelegraph. I'm going to full screen this for you guys. Why is this important? Well, it's understanding that, as a security officer, again, like I mentioned earlier, Gilbert Verdin did play a role, and not just a small role. He was the chief information security officer over at Vocalink. And of course, that's part of the umbrella of MasterCard. But he was responsible for security of the UK's payment infrastructure for the Bank of England. He covered a thing called BACS, and he was also part of Faster Payments, Link, no, not Chainlink, and check and credit schemes to lead Quant Network team in development of their blockchain operating system, aka the Overledger. Of course, back then he stated that he was looking forward to continuing the collaboration with, of course, MasterCard's blockchain strategy while also focusing on developing their own blockchain operating system, aka the Overledger. Says, quote, "We envision Overledger becoming a partner," think about that for a second, "for enterprises by helping them overcome the biggest challenges they face when trying to adopt blockchain tech, including the lack of interoperability and single ledger dependence." Now think about that for a second. Single ledger dependence. I mean, I'm extremely bullish on HBAR, but that gentleman, for example, is having single ledger dependence on, for example, Hedera. Beautiful thing about Quant is the settling into different assets whenever you want. Say what you want. That is very unique. And I'm going to show you a demo about that. Just in case you're new, listen to this quote from the one and only Gilbert Verdian. Overledger was designed in response to industry demand for a blockchain technology that interconnects and opens up closed proprietary blockchain networks to the internet. This ensures that companies like Mastercard and developers aren't restricted to or limited and entirely dependent on a single technology. Instead, they have the flexibility to easily migrate to another technology when required, as well as boosting their resilience by limiting their risk and exposure. This also allows them to unlock cost savings by better managing consensus fees, which are set with no option to basically remediate, right? Okay, so Quant's fostering all this, been there, done that, talks about ISO TC 307 and so on. All right, do we have more? Well, yes, we do. And this is good stuff too. This is from Greg Lunt. I've cited him in the past. Does a lot of great research and so on. He says breaking. How breaking? Well, this was basically March 11th, so it's not too breaking as of now, but it's not really too time sensitive. But look what it mentions. Nexi Group, as we know, uses QNT for interoperability. Again, March of this year, everybody. Announced that partnership with MasterCard to advance open banking payments through Europe. Unlike traditional payment options, open banking allows anyone with a bank account to make near instant digital payments into a merchant's account. Through this partnership, MasterCard Open Banking will facilitate e-commerce payments across Nexi's gateways throughout Europe. Quant Network is responsible for facilitating all, yes, you heard me right, everybody, all of Nexi's digital asset interoperability using its standardized API gateways. This is why we put so much emphasis on QNT, the overledger of API everything. As the world moves closer to fully tokenized economy, QNT ingrains itself further as the primary infrastructure for cross-network liquidity. Think about that. When I show you example of cross-network liquidity, I'm going to show you an example of cross-network settlement through what? Well, stick around for that demo if you haven't seen it already. Nexi is Europe's leading paytech, doing $3.3 billion in revenue, of course, back in 2023. But I like this notation from Greg. He notes that Quant already has strong ties to MasterCard. And again, pounding home what I just talked about with you guys before, because it was through Gilbert Verdian. And oh, by the way, CISO of the year when he worked at VocaLink, of course, under the umbrella of MasterCard. So that was good. And basically to see that MasterCard and Nexi teamed up, again, it doesn't need to say Quant. It just needs to, all of us need to understand it's Nexi's connection. And of course, this whole thing with MasterCard, it's the API side of things, okay? Interoperability, right? Sometimes people get tired of hearing that, but in reality, that's a nice thing. All right, is there anything somewhat new in regards to this? Absolutely. Let's jump over to here. Ledger Insights. Quite a few different researchers always cite Ledger Insights. I'm, of course, one of them. You've seen many people do this. This is basically this month in August. Let's full screen this again. So, largest UK banks joint regulated liability network trials as R3 Quant Tech selected. Remember at the beginning of the outline, I paused it on that particular part, talking about this gentleman from the interview, right? Just in case we forgot her name or his name, David Induraeus, CEO and co-founder of Fresh Supply Co. Remember how he was talking about the RLN? Remember how he talked about Parsher? Remember how he was talking about JP Morgan? Well, all these ones are part of the RLN. And to have Quant as the orchestrator for the RLN, if that's not bullish, I don't know what is. Because again, Quant's tech, the tech, that was the one that was selected. Jumping more into this, UK Finance announced that the regulated liability network has entered a new phase of experimental trials, of course, in the United Kingdom. The RLN aims to create a common platform for innovation and, of course, includes tokenized deposits. If you're wondering where those percentages I came up with earlier, it's in a reference to tokenized deposits by 2030. Can Quant Network and even Hedera hit 1% of those deposits, and how much would they be worth? stick around to that segment. Alongside conventional deposits, of course, going to use a shared ledger. Well, what about, for example, seeing that all of the largest banks, British banks, I should say, are participating in this, everybody? So there's a lot of people that won't stick around throughout the whole video, but shout out to all you guys that are still listening, because guess what? Who are the participants? Barclays, Citi, HSBC, Lloyds, NatWest, Nationwide, Santander, Standard Chartered, Virgin Money, as well as card firms, MasterCard, and even their top competitor, aka Visa. I mean, nowadays, or not even nowadays, I mean, for the last 30 years or so, right? When you say Visa, you also say MasterCard and vice versa. But the bottom line, guys, is this statement right here. RLN selected R3 and Quant. It doesn't say, for example, that they didn't. And these are the things that we have confirmed from speculation to confirmation. So these are technology partners with DXC leading the system integration work. And UK Finance, like it says, is the project coordinator with help from EY and Linklaters. That's the link that we're talking about. The aim was, or still is, to develop prototype to assess the benefits of the shared platform. There's, of course, trials are still running. And basically speaking, I keep forgetting today is actually September 1st. So, this was posted on the 16th, so just a few weeks ago. But the key thing is understanding it's the tech, benefits of the tech and how other companies or fintechs will use the tech. Look at this quote for a second, because I know I'm reading a lot of this verbatim, but this is good stuff. The project is being run to test hypotheses about the benefits of a UK RLN as a platform for innovation and will be integral to future-proofing and progressing the UK's financial infrastructure. This is, of course, from the point of view of Jana McIntosh. She's the managing director of payment innovation and resilience over at UK Finance. All right, for all you guys that are listening, I'll list this other thing verbatim. They're doing 3 use cases, or a trial, I should say. One application will reduce fraud for online purchases, making conditional payments that settle on delivery of the goods. All right, guys, I'll come back in the frame on this. I want to talk about this for a brief moment, okay? Because I know this is starting to turn into a deep dive. It always ends up being that way for some reason. But the bottom line is this. If you go to the Quant Network site, what is one of the highlighted products of Overledger? It's Authorized. Authorized solves this problem. So you can respect that. And, of course, you can look more into that if you want. I've done a couple deep dives about Authorized. But that aged well as well. A couple more things I want to get into just real quick. In the past, I talked about Koju. It talks about that by reducing fraud for online purchases, by making conditional payments that will settle on delivery of the goods, another trial will happen that will house the transactions in association with distributed ledger technology firm Koju. The third will involve delivery versus payment for digital bond transactions. And how many times have we talked about digital bonds, whether it's Hedera, whether it's Stellar, and of course, some of these other things with Quant. So thought I would point that out. And then this last part, I didn't want to read the top 2 paragraphs above this because this is good, because we did talk about RLN, and you heard this gentleman being interviewed from Brandon. He says specifically RLN and that tech. Let's not forget this for a second. On the technology front, Quant participated in the Bank of England's Project Rosalind. We've been there, we've done that. But it's those trials for a digital pound that used APIs for provider integration. Who do you think is the provider? Right, Quant Network. By including Quant, it helps provide continuity with that work. Several of the banks have experience with R3's core to enterprise blockchain. For example, 3, which are Lloyds, NatWest, Nationwide, have invested in Koju, and they, of course, use Corda. Barclays previously trialed Koju and other Corda-based applications such as Fintium. All right, what about the United States? Well, last year, the RLN had U.S. trials. Use SETL and digital asset Canton. All right, those are the trials. What happens when we get to mass adoption with this? This is what I'm talking about when you see price action happen and people don't even understand why it's happening. It's supply and demand. Don't let anybody flood you out of that. All right, some notes for you guys. Why do I want to mention some of these things? Well, because we did talk about at the beginning of the outline Hedera and so on. So I want to give you guys some notes. And basically speaking, it's MasterCard's multi-token network versus the regulated liability network, the RLN. Basically, we got to kind of compare and contrast both of them. And hear me out on this. So both are emerging platforms. Both are definitely designed to facilitate tokenized asset and digital payments, but they do have distinct approaches and, of course, focus areas. So I want to talk about two key things in regards to scope, in regards to the key differences between the MasterCard token network, which we're just going to, moving forward, call it the MTN, and of course the RLN. So scope, two things. MasterCard's multi-token network primarily focuses on enabling tokenized assets such as loyalty points, gaming rewards, and central bank digital currency CBDCs. It definitely, from what I gathered, aims to provide a secure and efficient platform for these assets, of course, to be exchanged, stored, and used in various transactions. And if you're wanting to watch that full outline, just go watch Brandon over at the HBAR Bull. He's awesome, right? Wouldn't mind doing a collaboration with him in the future, but it is what it is. But that's what I'm saying, okay? So gotta at least acknowledge that. All right, cool. What about the RLN? Well, RLN emphasizes regulated liabilities, hence it's right in its name. And also, of course, bank deposits, securities. It seeks to create a decentralized network where these assets can be represented, transferred, and, of course, settled in a more efficient, transparent manner. Now, that example, in regards to settled, we have talked about the regulated settlement network. So there's the RLN and there's RSN. Say what you want. I want to show you the demo in regards to Quant network here in a bit. Right after I get done with these notes, you will see firsthand just how that is done. Come to the conclusion yourself of why we are all so bullish for the most part about the long-term outlook for QNT. It's that ability to be able to have true interoperability, but not just saying, oh, we have interoperability at scale. M10 is a whole other subject in itself, but 1 million TPS for the banking sector, that is very, very bullish. And yes, real world TPS, not hypothetical equations. This was tested. Look into it if you're the type of person that does research. Okay, so if these assets from the RLN are represented, transferred, and settled in a more efficient, transparent manner, well, that would also lead us to what? That will lead us to, of course, the governance. Yes, the hot topic of governance gets brought up every so often, does it not? Well, two things to compare in regards to the MTN and, of course, the RLN. Let's start, of course, with the MTN because we talked about Hedera earlier. Well, it is centralized and it is controlled by MasterCard itself. Were you aware of that? This provides a strong foundation, of course, for security and compliance, but may limit the network's decentralization. So that is very, very, very centralized. However, with the RLN, it is designed to be decentralized. So they get a win in that category. But they also have governance that's shared among participating institutions. Parsher, JP Morgan, Citi, etc., etc. But it would very well lead to greater innovation and flexibility. But from what I also gathered, of course, it poses a challenge in terms of coordination and, of course, consensus. Does Hedera win in regards to consensus? Because let's face it, Hedera is the hash graph consensus protocol, right? And it's not even a blockchain. It's a distributed ledger technology. So, protocols, consensus. All right. What about use case? Let's talk about that for a second too. MasterCard's multi-token network targets a wider range of tokenized assets, including loyalty points, and like I mentioned earlier, gaming rewards, CBDCs, but it aims to simplify the process of managing and using assets in everyday transactions. Now, everyday transactions. Here is, of course, where a person would say, yup, did we forget about Fed now? And guess what? I haven't, and I'd be with you on that. Difference between everyday transactions and the larger scale ones when it comes to the big institutions and whatnot, right? I get that. But I like to be investor into both, because when the market goes extremely bullish, there will always be the ones that will have their day. So why not have both? All right, last part, RLN, because we did talk about use cases. So while they have a primary focus on regular liabilities such as bank deposits and, of course, securities, they in themselves seek to improve efficiency, transparency of the financial transactions, especially in areas like cross-border payments and, of course, even securities settlement. So want to get that out there. Now, before we jump into this demo, I want to state this. There is definitely like comparing and contrasting in regards to everything that was said for HBAR and, of course, Quant. So are they truly two contenders, even though they had different tokenomics and so on? Well, of course. And basically, it's like this. For HBAR, they're focused on decentralized governance and consensus mechanisms. That in itself creates its own supply and demand, but Hedera could very well be suited even for the RLN. And of course, this platform's ability to handle high transaction volumes, because let's face it, they do about 28,000 TPS in itself. Last I heard, even higher than Solana. But it's their low latency that would attract settling regulated like liabilities efficiently or effectively. What about Qnt? Well, it's the Overledger platform. They aim to connect different blockchains to legacy systems, and that could, of course, be very valuable, of course, for both networks, but basically it's providing a bridge. Think about it, R3 Corda, right? Providing a bridge between traditional financial systems and those emerging in itself with tokenized platforms. And of course, interoperability, right? That's seamless in itself. Going forward, the way I look at it is I think both projects will do extremely well in the area of aligning their specific needs and requirements for Mastercards in itself. Whether it's Hedera with the MTN, and of course, whether it's the RLN. They do demonstrate their technical capabilities in their own right, and you better believe that means more scalability, security, and of course, interoperability. I mean, say what you want, it will establish strong partnerships. So I did want to bring you guys that compare and contrast. Jumping into the next part, here is the demo that we're talking about. A lot of you guys have already seen this in the past when I was doing live shows. Let's watch it again. If you're new, you've never seen this. Let's just jump into that segment. Here we go.
Quant's demo application showcases Overledger's API and provides an example of how to build an application with the client side and server side using Overledger 2.0. Overledger 2.0 uses OAuth 2 to authenticate API requests. This token will be used in the authorization header of your API calls to Overledger. The demo application showcases the single transaction and linked transaction features, as well as enabling the creation of subscriptions, which receive status updates about transactions submitted to a DLT via a callback URL. For single transactions, first select a DLT, enter an origin ID, a destination ID, and a destination amount. Once done, click Create. The demo app will show an API output screen to demonstrate the steps that takes place each time an API call is made to Overledger. The API output screen has been slowed down for viewing. Accepting the DLT transaction fee will initiate the signing of the transaction and then execute the transaction through Overledger. The details of the transaction can then be viewed and subscribed to receive status updates to the callback URL. Subscribing to the transaction, Overledger will return a subscription ID, where clicking on transaction details will call the MDAP transaction API to retrieve status updates from Overledger, and clicking on full details will search the DLT for the transaction information. For linked transactions, select the DLT that the initial transaction will be on, and which DLT will have the audit of the transaction. The initial transaction will follow the same flow as the single transaction, And once it has been executed and subscribed to, transaction updates will appear in the subscriptions page. Once the transaction is successful, an audit button will appear on the subscriptions page that will initiate the audit transaction creation flow. On the subscription page, we can also unsubscribe from receiving updates if we wish.
All right, welcome back. Glad to show that again. And of course, I've shown other examples of this in the past recently, right, over the course of a few months in regards to Make, right? We've actually seen visuals, proof of even connecting to like X and setting up, a form of payment through the X platform, formerly known as Twitter. That in itself is big, right? You could do other ones like, competitors of PayPal, Stripe, et cetera, et cetera. So again, understanding that this is not the first time we've seen some of these examples, but it pounds home back to the reference of the gentleman that was interviewed with Brandon H. Bull. All right, new news. Let's jump into this for a second. So let's take you over to here. And basically it's this. And it's this statement about European Blockchain Convention, being excited to work with Quant Network as a sponsor for the 10th European Blockchain Convention. Quant, like it says, pioneer in distributed ledger technology and a champion of interoperability. Goes on to mention that they provide financial institutions and enterprises with the right foundation for digital finance. And of course, this is posted on August 14th, somewhat new. And if you're wondering about, some of these key things, I want you to understand that it's how we really truly connect all this together. I mean, for me, personally speaking, I like what I found out in regards to, understanding like transactions and so on. So on this example, you're going to see Dr. Leemon Baird, you're going to see Dr. Leemon Baird talk about the order of how this all works. So back to the Hedera side of things for just a brief bit. I'm going to play this.
Transactions.
And I want you guys just to hear where I'm coming from with this, because again, this is one of the smartest people in the blockchain DLT space talking about the importance, because he's the inventor of the hash graph algorithm. Okay, this is from a few years back, but listen to this, and we'll come back here in just a moment. Here we go.
Transactions can be anything that manipulates the information it's storing. So you could have a cryptocurrency and it just remembers who has how much of it. Or you could have tokens and it remembers who has them. Or it could run little programs for you. But the important thing is to get the order right. Because if I only have one token and I send it to you, but I also send it to somebody else, those two transactions, it matters which one was first. Because the first one will work. By the time the second one happens, well, I don't have the token anymore, so it doesn't work. So we have to know the order. So it's all about having a group of computers come to an agreement on the order. The problem, of course, is you shouldn't trust anybody. No one person. You have to end up trusting that the group as a whole will be mostly honest, or most of the hashing power in the world is known to you, or something about the group as a whole you have to trust, but you don't have to trust any particular computer. And so a bunch of the computers can be evil and they can't affect you at all. This is what ledgers are. The earliest one, with Bitcoin, what they invented was the idea was, tell you what, we'll all take turns. All these computers will just take turns adding new transactions onto the list of transactions. It's like a stack of these. Actually, what we'll do is we'll have a whole group of transactions, a block, and we'll just keep putting the blocks on top of each other like a stack of blocks. And that works, assuming everybody knows which ones go next. So if you try to add a block and I try to add a block at the same time, we have to know whose is first. And if we're millions of people all adding a block at the same time, I don't know how you would ever sort out that mess. So what they said was, well, we'll solve really hard math problems on our computers, so hard that all the computers on Earth, only one every 10 minutes, can win the puzzle, can solve the puzzle and win the prize, and that computer has the right to add the next block. So every 10 minutes, we get a new block on. And so maybe after an hour, you're pretty sure that the stack has grown up and somebody who tried to branch off, their branch has died. So maybe after 6 confirmations, after an hour, you can trust it. So you can put in your transaction and after an hour, you can trust it. You can only do a few a second, which makes them really expensive, but you can do it and it works. And now you have this system where you don't have to trust any one person. No one's in charge. Then other people say, well, let's make it faster. Tell you what, the most efficient way of running something is a dictatorship. So we'll have a leader, one computer that's in charge, and it will tell everybody what order the transactions are in. And then we'll just take turns being the dictator. And we'll maybe go around the circle, or maybe we'll pseudo-randomly choose. The problem is, if you have a leader, it may not be fair in how the transactions get ordered and which ones get left out. But even worse, what if attackers have a DDoS attack, a distributed denial of service attack? They've compromised computers all over the internet, and they flood that one computer with packets. That one computer won't be able to talk to anybody. And you could say, well, that doesn't matter, because in a few seconds we'll have a new leader. Yeah, but the attacker can play follow the leader and follow the new leader and keep following the leader around and keep the whole network shut down for as long as they feel like shutting down one computer at a time. That's a real problem. If you have a leader-based system, this is an inherent problem. And a bunch of people have done leader-based systems. And it's a problem. You can have DDoS attacks and they can shut it down. Now, of course, you're never totally secure. If you can compromise every computer on the network, then every system is unreliable and unbelievable. If you can hide lots of hashing power in your basement, maybe a major world government could do that, then the whole network can be compromised. If you can DDoS and shut down every single computer, well then of course the whole network freezes because there's no computers to run. But what we want to do is protect against someone who isn't able to do that much. If they can only shut down one computer at a time or a handful of computers at a time, it should have no effect on the network. With a leader-based system, it destroys the whole network. The whole network freezes. There's no progress whatsoever. So what we have is totally different. Every computer is essentially making up new blocks and new transactions all the time at the same time. We don't take turns. And they tell everybody else what they've made up. And everybody gets it. And we do it in the simplest way possible. Random gossip. That just means that each computer, when it has a message, picks another computer at random and tells them. And then picks another one at random and tells them, and so on. And each of those picks someone at random and tell them. And it spreads like gossip in a school or in an office. It's just spreading at the rate of gossip. The rumor mill is the most efficient communication on earth. And that's how it works. Every computer can be adding new transactions at the same time. They tell everybody else just by this gossip protocol, so it's really fast. Nothing is more resilient than that. You shut down a few computers, we don't care. Everything just keeps going. There is no leader, not even for a moment, not even randomly chosen, never a leader, just everybody does their own thing. And whenever you tell someone a message, you add two little hashes to that message, two little indications saying, oh, by the way, here's the last message I created, and here's the last message I received. That's it. Every time you send someone a message, you also just put this little note at the bottom saying, here's the last message I created, here's the last one I received from someone else. And once you've collected all the messages, they're like puzzle pieces. They can fit together because of those two hashes. You can put them together into a graph, connected by their hashes. We call it a hash graph. And by looking at it, every computer knows exactly how the information flowed through the network. They say, well, your transaction went to Alice and Bob, and then Alice sent it to Carol, and Bob sent it to Dave and Ed, and you can just see the entire history. And given that, you know when the transaction reached half the world. And then you can put the transactions in order by when they reached half the world, and you're done.
All right. So right after that, Dr. Leemon Baird talks about going to consensus, right? Hash graph consensus algorithm. Okay, he invented that. So he mentioned specifically messages, which brings us to our next part of the outline. Yeah, that's right. ISO 222. Take a look into this. Hopefully you did stick around. Shout out to everybody who stuck around. All right. So Swift, do they have any citation? They do. SEB pioneering ISO 222 for corporates as a case study. I've gone ahead and taken the liberty to jump into this for you guys. So I downloaded the PDF, and what does it specifically mention? It talks about the harmonization of ISO 222 market practices for corporates. Interesting. Why is this so interesting? Well, it's because, basically speaking, when we get into it, there is a key thing that's going to be brought up in regards to SEPA. If you're old school, you know the connection of SEPA and QNT, but check this out for yourself. Number one, you see here from Harry Ratanen, I'm probably not pronouncing it right, manager of formats and standards at SEB. And he talks about that across Europe and before the advent of SEPA, there may have been different 250 local national ways to process a simple credit transfer, and how it's now reduced to 170 ways, but it's filling in the gap, and how ISO 222 is a solution for corporates. Look what it says. Single Euro payment area, SEPA, acting as a strong use case. ISO 222 evolved into a proven standard for end-to-end business processes for corporates that can be used both locally and globally. Launched back in 2008, SEPA harmonizes all euro-denominated payments across 34 countries and in promises throughout the forced introduction of ISO 222 standard in XML. Goes on to mention a little bit more about this, and here it is. Practical example for single corporate institution is the presence across multiple European countries. For example, SEPA credit transfer based salaries can now be processed using the same format, using one process and one debtor bank account. A couple more things to get into. It goes on to mention this. I'll read this left side. This is a good quote. You can think of the ISO 222 repository like Lego building blocks, a really flexible framework allowing you to build anything that businesses need. And usually you can use or reuse what the community has already developed. Doesn't that pound home literally what Dr. Leemon Baird just mentioned in regards to stacking? Goes on to also mention this, that SEB supports both C2B and B2C channels. Just in case you're wondering what that means, C2B basically means consumer to business, and B2C means business to consumer, but it's the whole idea that payments and direct debit initiations are part of these channels, and it has status reporting to bank accounts that report some of this, and how you can have SEPA be supported towards the local market schemes in the SEB countries. Goes on to mention that corporate customers, SEB supports the transport of ISO 222 messages in XML over multiple channels, and it gets more into the whole thing. It's understanding there's a new era of harmonization of data through messages, just in case you're new to some of this stuff. All right, I'm going to jump into the next part of this. Why am I bringing up SEPA all of a sudden? Well, boom. Bullet match is sticking to steel because August 27th, Quant Network states that SEPA instant payments, why banks need to act now. Another call to action from not Gilbert Verdian of the Quant Network, but a different lady from the Quant Network, Rachel Bow, or Baugh, probably not pronouncing it right. But back in 2007, and I will read most of this, is good stuff, the UK positioned itself as the forefront of the global payments when it took the lead in the implementation of instant payments. But in the European Union, it is basically catching up. They will explore what this means for European banks and how the UK can keep its lead. Again, pounding it home why Gilbert Verdian warned the world over in Lisbon, Portugal, a few months back in regards to EBA Day 2024. While the UK has focused on the leading of the payments race, European banks have been delivering innovation in other areas such as customer experience. However, the focus on front-end improvements has left European banks on the back front when it comes to transitioning to instant payments, which in turn has created critical vulnerabilities in light of SEPA Instant. This lady, Rachel Bow, says instant payment legislative proposal is a significant step towards creating a more streamlined and efficient payment system. And now all of a sudden we're seeing more updates in regards to patents. All right, that's interesting. But look at this for a second. We all know what instant payments are for the most part, but it's this following of the European Union's Parliament's decision to require, and again, requirements is another way of saying mandates. So the requirements of payment service providers offering SEPA credit transfers to also offer instant credit transfers to their customers at the same price. When was this first introduced? 2017. And it goes on to mention that SEPA instant payments were created to allow the transfer of money between accounts in Europe up to, for example, EUR 100,000 in less than 10 seconds, 24/7, 365. So is it safe to say that SEPA is like FedNow, but for Europe? Draw your own conclusion, but understanding Quant referencing this, I'm bullish as all hell. This marked a further step in European payments integration and was intended to bring a paradigm shift to the region's payment habits. Instant payments were expected to become the norm. And here's more data. Now 2024. Despite the relatively good coverage, with 71% of PSPs in Euro area offering instant payments, the share of instant payment transactions in all SEPA payments has only reached 17%. But this was led to regulatory intervention. Again, understanding why aren't we, embracing the tech? And this is to facilitate further adoption, of course, of instant payments. So where do we go in regards to 2025? Well, it goes on to mention that all PSPs in the Eurozone would be required, again, mandates again, to enable their clients to receive SEPA instant payments by the 9th of January 2025 and send SEPA payments instantly by October 9th of 2025. Again, why? Next month is November 2025, and that would be your mandate, full mandate of ISO 20022. All right. One more thing, instant payments legislative proposal is designed to make transfers faster, more secure, and affordable. Significant step towards creating a more streamlined and efficient payment system that benefits both businesses and, of course, consumers. All right, here's the next part. Again, from Greg Lunt. Q&T officially been granted its second patent in Europe. Understanding supply and demand forces. That's 5 patents awarded in the last 16 months. People saying that Q&T is going to go to 0. Look at this part. Quite impressive. Covers 38 EU countries. First jurisdiction to give its blessing to what Quant is calling the secure multi-distributed ledger system. Patent covers a novel approach to verifying executing, reading it too much today, transactions across multiple DLTs. Then storing the results and records for integrity. Powerful, protected system for multi-chain world. Next up, USA and Asia. Here's a citation, and basically speaking, blow up on the other screen real quick. All right, let's share it in a new tab. Yep, that's a little bit bigger. And you see it, Quant Network. Here's the citation, the application number if you want to nerd it out. Leave it on screen for just a moment. But yeah, following an examination of European patent application number, this one, they hereby grant the designated contracting states. And you see, for example, these particular ones in Europe. And then underneath that, that's a lot, by the way. Okay. You see Quant Network. So, boom. You want to talk about Quant, for example, is on sale and so on. Here, I meant to share this one. I'm sorry. There you go. Look at that. Yeah. Quant's like in the $60 range. All right. Here's the moment you've been waiting for, because some people like prices and stuff like that. This is being extremely conservative. This is from Mckinsey. Okay. This article is called From Ripples to Waves: The Transformative Power of Tokenizing Assets. That's the name of the article. McKinsey is a great source. They're one of the best consultancy firms out there. Based on their analysis, they expect that the total tokenized market capitalization could reach, everybody, $2 trillion by 2030. It says excluding cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin and stablecoins like Tether. Okay? That doesn't mean all crypto, it just means ones like that. It says driven by adoption in mutual funds, bonds, exchange-traded notes, ETNs, loans, securitization, and alternative funds. In a bullish scenario, which I'm very bullish on these scenarios, this value could be doubled to around $4 trillion, but they're less optimistic than previously published estimates as we approach the middle of the decade. All right, is there anything more? There is. They estimate that tokenized market capitalization across asset classes could reach around $2 trillion by 2030, and this is driven by mainly the above assets. They're pessimistic about some of this, but it's that range from $1 trillion to $4 trillion, and their estimate is exclusive of stablecoins, including tokenized deposits. Think about that, everybody. That's bullish in itself. And this last part, their market capitalization estimates for 2030 assume on average, and again, on average, a compound annual growth of 75% across asset classes, with wave one assets leading the way. Again, wave one assets. Think about what wave one assets we are into. I don't have to spell it out to you. And this last part about the pioneers that brought it all, right? It's fair to expect the tokenization to spur such a multi-decadal transformation of the financial industry. There may be particular benefits of early movers who are able to catch the wave. Are you catching the wave? Or are you getting flooded out by people that don't do real research? Pioneers can capture oversized market share, especially in the markets benefiting from economies of scale. Early movers and tokenized cash payments and on-chain repos have demonstrated this. Interesting. Yes, very, very interesting. All right, let's take it to this next part. They talk about 2 trillion. Here's that number. So the top part is the full number. Times that by 0.01%. You get a total of 20 billion. So what would be the price of, for example, H-bar if only did 1% of this particular amount? Well, that brings us to $20 billion market cap. So can they do 1% of this 2 trillion? I think they can. And can they achieve $20 billion market cap? I think that's more than achievable. That's being extremely conservative. Okay, I'm with you, Max, because I want to hear more of the conservative side of things. All right. So this would bring H-bar with the market cap of, for example, Doge to about roughly 40 cents. And of course, this is lowball because Doge is right around $15 billion market cap. In this example, we have 20 billion, but the next one was like Ripple XRP, and that was in around the $37 billion range. So this is even being even more conservative. Okay, H-bar is under 5 cents. It's in the 4-cent range right now. It would be 8.15x from here, and that's only at this particular sector, guys. Only 1% of this sector. That's bullish as all hell. All right, what about QNT? All right, let's jump into that. QNT with a market cap of Doge, because again, you know, Doge around $15 billion market cap. Okay, so again, for that example, this will put QNT at $980, a 16x from where we're at the $60 range. So this is being extremely conservative, and if anything, I wanted to bring it to you guys. Why is that? Because at the end of the day, the way I look at it is basically like this. You know, it's acquiring these assets at these particular prices. And if anything, understanding the bigger picture. That bigger picture is which ones will be the pioneers and which ones are part of that wave one. So with that said, hopefully you stuck around to the end of the outline. If you did, do me a simple favor and type into the comments of this video 816. And I'll know that you watched to the end of the outline. If you appreciate content like this, again, smash the like, share it to others on X or whatever social media platform you choose. I would really appreciate it. Thanks again for watching, everybody. Know what you have, know what you hold. The research trumps FUD 110%. We'll see you on the next one.
If managing your crypto feels like solving a puzzle, it's time to switch to Decent Wallet. Say goodbye to complicated setups and hello to Decent Wallet, the hassle-free solution to your digital currency needs. With just a few taps, you can manage, track, and secure your crypto with unmatched ease. And here's the best part. Grab your Decent Wallet at a discounted price by using the referral link below. Don't miss out on making your crypto experience smoother and more secure.